So this is got to be the loveliest place I've had the pleasure to give a presentation in a long, long time. So I'd like to thank MapleSoft for the invitation to be here and you for coming. So what I'd like to talk about today is what we're doing with online education at the University of Waterloo. I think everybody here is well versed and is trying to use online education for mathematical subjects in various different ways. And so this will not be a technical talk about performing online education, but rather to talk about how we're thinking about it, where we're going with it, and what we see as being missing today and some of the things that we need to continue to do. So first of all, Waterloo. Waterloo is the home of Maple, as many know. The Maple itself was a spin-off from the University of Waterloo. I was actually one of the original authors when I was a grad student in Waterloo back in the 70s and early 1980s. The university is 60 years old now. We had 74 students back then. The university now has something like 33,000 students. And it's been listed by our Canadian university ranking as the most innovative university for the past 23 years. It has well-recognized programs in mathematics and computer science. Depending on which league tables you're looking at, they'll be somewhere in the top 25 in the world, or plus or minus. And it has what we call a cooperative education program, which was really why the university was founded, in order to be able to give work experience to students in every subject. So students will spend 4 months studying, then 4 months working at a job in their area of study. So it's not selling French fries or something. If they're studying engineering, they'll spend 4 months doing an engineering job. And then they'll come back and they'll spend 4 months studying, and they'll be in and out. And this way they develop maturity quite quickly. And the number of jobs that students hold is quite large. So depending on what faculty you're studying in, either 100% of the students are participating in this co-op program, or in other faculties it will be less. In mathematics, it's about 80% of the students for many programs are in this co-op program. And the university did, I think it was 20,000 job placements last year. Now, we also have a faculty of mathematics at the university, and it's quite large. We have about 8,000 students studying mathematics at the university. It's about a quarter of the university. So we have a scale where we're able to try things that might not be feasible in some other place. There are several different departments for different areas of mathematics, and in Waterloo, computer science is a kind of mathematics. All right, so that's where computer science lives. Because after all, these days, computer science is more about proving your program is correct and the logical design and the information flow than it is about deciding where to put the resistors. That's not the main topic of computer science anymore. We have, as I said, about a quarter of the students at the university are studying mathematics, and the faculty of mathematics has been the source of many spin-off companies such as MapleSoft. OpenText is Canada's largest software company, and so on and so forth. And we've got various activities around the world. So I'm going to now think about teaching. So if we're going to be doing computer-aided instruction or online education, we should ask ourselves just for a moment, what is teaching? And so here's a painting that is located not very far from here. So this is our academy. So teaching originally was a form of vocational apprenticeship. Somebody would be, well, you could even think back all the way into the animal kingdom where you have animals learning from their parents. But for human beings, we can think about vocational apprenticeship. Here we have a scribe learning how to write Egyptian hieroglyphics. So you'd be in a training under some master of some activity, and you would learn for practical purposes. Universities are interesting. The ancient universities dating back around 1,000 years, 700 years, 1,000 years, something like this. Originally, so the term academic freedom is something that is used a lot in North America. I don't know about here in Italy, but it is certainly academic freedom is hailed as being very important. And actually, academic freedom is very interesting how it relates to the origin of universities. See, originally, universities were almost like little city-states inside a larger, in the UK, would be inside a larger country. So the king would not try to impose his will too strongly because he might not actually be able to. So it was easier just to say you have academic freedom, you're a self-governing place, and we'll kind of live and let live. Now, I don't know about the history of the ancient universities in Italy, but certainly universities became a very important source of learning in the Anglo-Saxon culture, and originally they were closely tied to learning about divinity and theology, and then later other subjects came along, and even today in the ancient universities in the UK, in the academic procession, it is the doctors of divinity and so on who come first, and then us lowly mathematicians and engineers and so on, we come at the end of the parade. All right, now teaching has evolved over into a next stage where we would have a classroom where there were many students of different ages sitting all together in the American one-room schoolhouse. And yes, the teacher would try to give some special attention to the older students to teach them something different today than to the younger students. But really we had sort of one teacher serving many people, trying to specialize what was being directed, but we would see that the students in the classroom would, by and large, all hear the same thing. And we see that today. The students in a large classroom are all hearing and seeing the same thing. They're not getting individualized instruction unless they go to some tutorial hours or so on and so forth. But in the large lecture, the sage on the stage, as people say in English, is a model that doesn't address individual needs. It gives like cafeteria food. It can't be too spicy. It can't be too strong in one way or the other. It has to be something that is not particularly offensive to anyone, and so it's not actually going to be the tastiest food. And the same thing is true for our lectures at our universities. They're not going to be the tastiest lectures if everybody has to follow every aspect of the lecture. Now, a talented professor, a talented instructor, can make sure to sort of sing in several registers at the same time and to have something for everyone so that everybody walks away with something. But that's something that requires a lot of talent, and not every instructor can do that. Now, in several places, the notion of distance education became important. At the University of Waterloo, back 40 years, distance education was part of the scene. And the way that distance education was done was to mail out magnetic tapes, so voice recordings, and to mail out paper assignments, and students would write their assignments and mail them back in, and they get graded. And then that moved on to mailing out CD-ROMs, and then to online courses. So distance education has been part of Waterloo's innovation for quite some time. And I remember when I was a PhD student at Waterloo, actually the used tapes, they were very high quality tapes. You could get the used tapes, and they were very good for recording music and so on and so forth. All right, so now online education is like can be done very badly and usually is done very badly. It's like the one size fits all that doesn't fit anybody perfectly, like the cafeteria food that nobody finds delicious but nobody finds really horrible often. So, for example, if you're a manager at the University of Waterloo, you have some staff that you have to oversee, then you have to have this mandatory workplace safety training. That is really bad. That you just go through the same thing. There's a quiz at the end, and if you don't get the right answer, then it goes back, and you have to go through all the slides again, and then now you know what the question is at the end. It's not going to be a different question, so now you see on slide 17 that the answer's right there. And what does this do? Well, mostly what it does is it fulfills the university's risk management so that they can say that when you do something wrong that you've been trained and it's your fault. Okay, it's not really designed for high quality teaching. Now, this is being recorded, so I should be careful about what I say. This is not the official university policy. All right, now what we are starting to see a little bit now is adaptive methods in online instruction. This is not new. I'm sure that there are people in the audience here who will remember, let's say, books on learning chess or something, where you'll read down, you'll try a problem, and if you get it right, then you'll skip to this section. If you get it wrong, then you'll go to another section, and so on. And we can see things like that already in well-done online courses, where there may be several paths to navigate through a fixed set of material. Now, what is missing in this picture? Why do people go to class? They don't go to class to hear the professor speak all the time. I remember when I was a professor in France, many of the students just showed up to talk with each other because, after all, it was cheaper than going to a cafe. All right, so the students are wanting to have interaction amongst each other, interactions with the professor, and it's part of a larger package. So I think that, so if we're just focusing on the delivery of knowledge through text, we're missing a very important part of what makes the education experience what it is and how people learn. Students often learn from peer-to-peer interaction, not from professor to student interaction. So students want to be able to talk to students. Now, we're getting to a stage where we're able to use computers to model what the learner knows. This is something which is a very important opportunity for online education. A couple of years ago, there was this lovely movie, Her, where some artificial intelligence, did anybody see this movie? This movie, Her? Okay, one person, 2 people, 3 people. Okay, some people don't admit it. They watched it and they liked it, but they don't want to admit they liked it. Okay, so this is a very serious academy, and we're not going to admit to watching all of these movies. But this was an interesting one because what happens is that the artificial intelligence is talking to one person, just through their electronic device. And it has Scarlett Johansson, I think, has a lovely voice, and this fellow really starts to get into these conversations. And then he finds out that somebody else is also having a conversation, and that, yes, well, he has a special relationship. He has a special relationship with this artificial intelligence, but so does this other person. And then we find out that many people do, hundreds of people have what they consider to be a special relationship with this intelligence. And what's happening is that this artificial intelligence is keeping track of the conversation and is understanding the relationship with each and every one of these individuals. Now that is a promise of online education. That is a very different kind of thing than serving up the same cafeteria food the way that we do with one person talking to a room full of hundreds, or the usual way that we do online education today. So why are we interested in these things in online education at Waterloo? Well, we want to be able to reach not just enough students to fill our classroom, because after all, for every student who gets into the Faculty of Mathematics, there are 13 other students who have all the qualifications to get in, and we don't have room for them. What we're really interested in doing is being able to reach out to all of the most talented students in the world. Some of them have to stay home and look after their sick grandmother, or maybe they would like to stay close to their family business, or whatever. And so not everybody is able to travel to university. We have an interesting program in the Faculty of Mathematics, the Master of Mathematics for Teachers. So These are teachers who have gone through the usual Bachelor of Education process. They've been teaching for several years, and they want to learn to teach math better. Is it realistic that they will take 2 years out of their career and come back to university to study to get another degree? Not very likely. On the other hand, if they can do a part-time degree from their own home, how likely is it that they will? We thought we might get about 10 people in this program. Well, in the first year, 40 people signed up. Okay, so it turned out to be very popular because the teachers actually are very happy to get another qualification. It's an interesting degree. It increases their pay. Many reasons why people will do these things. But it's very interesting that we have some of our students in the Faculty of Mathematics at Waterloo, the first time they set foot on campus is when they walk across the stage to receive their Master of Mathematics for teachers. So we want to be able to access talent around the world, not just for teachers in Ontario, but the brilliant math students who exist everywhere. So what is it that we've actually got going on at Waterloo? There are many fully online programs in non-mathematical areas. The presentation of mathematical material is somewhat challenging, and the usual kind of software for doing online education doesn't really give what was needed. And so the University of Waterloo saw what was going on at MapleSoft and actually contracted MapleSoft to make some enhancements to meet our needs. And we started to develop many online courses in the area of mathematics. We currently have about 25 courses that are deployed or under development in Mobius, and we have hundreds of courses that have been online using other things previously. But the Mobius is the direction that we're going now. We have one online degree in the Faculty of Mathematics and several elsewhere on campus for non-mathematical areas, and we're moving towards more online degrees. The interesting thing is that the courses that we offer will have, some of them will have in-classroom courses, sections, as well as online sections at the same time, or during the same semester. And so a student can decide whether they're going to go to class in the classroom, whether they do the online version, and there's no difference in the credit they get. So in some sense, the more we populate the set of courses, then students can eventually be taking completely online degrees. They're no different from the classroom degrees. There's no distinction because there's no distinction among the courses, and the requirements are based on the courses. Okay, I talked about the Master of Mathematics for teachers. I talked about our online STEM courses. There's lots of them. So what's going on at the University of Waterloo in the area of research that touches upon these things that lead to online instruction for mathematics? So I mentioned that Maple was a program that came out of the University of Waterloo. This came from the Symbolic Computation Research Group, where the desire was to be able to do mathematical computing with formulas instead of numbers. And this is not like the automatic or the assisted theorem proving. This is for doing computer algebra. The core areas being differential algebra, algebraic geometry, and linear algebra. That's what's under the hood. Oh. That's what's under the hood. And then there's many sort of things built on top of that that give a full mathematical experience. So there we go, Maple coming out of Waterloo. But what else? What do we need for a full-fledged mathematical experience? So a couple of things that our group and that I'm involved in. One area is the area of mathematical handwriting. So to be able to write with a pen, so all of my telephones these days are telephones with pens, so I can take notes and do math with them. And so then we want to be able not just to get bitmaps of the mathematics, we want to actually be able to parse the mathematics and use this as an input into a mathematical software system. And then in order to be able to parse the mathematics, we have to deal with understanding what the sequences of symbols mean and so on and so forth, and there's no fixed vocabulary of words and whatever. I'll give a technical talk on this tomorrow. Another area has to do with the output of mathematics. So in different countries, we'll have different notations for the same thing. For example, if you're from China, you will not write TAN for tangent, you'll write TG. In your first course for calculus, you might use a prime notation, you might use Newton's notation for derivatives, and then when you get to a later course, you will maybe use the Leibniz notation for derivatives. And likewise for many different notations. And in fact, even at the same university with two profs teaching one course after the other, there'll be different notations for the same kind of mathematics. And so this led to the notion of having mathematical style sheets, where just by swapping out the style sheet, you completely change the notation to be so that would allow you to have a module that was written in a notation-independent way, and then you can connect the notation for the course. You can connect the notation for the course to the module. Another activity is this International Mathematical Knowledge Trust. Now there were earlier discussions about natural language processing. We're at the point now where we can start to parse mathematical literature at the research level. And so this is an ambitious project that's funded with seed funding from the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation on digitizing all of the world's mathematical literature, and not just to get bitmaps of the pages, not just to get PDFs of the articles, but to actually capture the knowledge that's in these articles, and to have a collection of the statements of the theorems, what are the claims of the article, eventually down the road to have fully formalized proofs of what's in these articles. But of course, many articles have incorrect results, and so we can't, it's a big job. So where do we start? So here's a story about an operating system. Now we see here on the top left what it used to look like to use a DOS computer. Was that perfect? No, it was not. Well, some people say yes, but that's like Konrad Lorenz's baby ducks imprinting on his boots, okay? It was not perfect. It was far from perfect. And then the next picture here is Windows 2, I think. And you see that was also far from perfect. And then we go on to Windows 3.1 and Windows 95, and each time it gets a little bit better. Clearly, if we wanted to solve all the world's problems in the first iteration, we never would have released an operating system. Okay, so we start with something, and then we get to where we're going. And that's what we have to be doing in the world of online education. We know that what we've got today is not perfect, but we have to do it because otherwise we're not going to be able to get to that stage where we're doing something more ambitious and more flexible. So that's have to get the right direction here. All right, so some things with the future. We know that online education will disrupt the post-secondary world. So yesterday morning, I was giving a presentation to the president and vice presidents of our university and all the deans. And the message was that online education at Waterloo is a priority. It certainly is for the faculty of mathematics, and it needs to be a priority for the rest of the university, because there will be disruption. If we think that we're going to be having the same standard model for universities 10 years from now, 20 years from now, within the careers of people in this room, then we're fooling ourselves. So we've seen what's happened to the transportation industry. The taxi industry has been totally changed. And we'll need to have some differentiators to stand out from the crowd of these, universities, all of whom are trying to get into the online space. All right, so what will we have to do that's different? Well, at Waterloo, we've got scale. We've got enough that we can invest in an early deployment of online education, because it's just like sequencing the genome, that the initial full sequencing of a human genome was horrendously expensive and it took years. And now, can do a complete genome analysis of an organism in a matter of hours, and it's 1,000 times cheaper or something. Well, the same thing is going to be true for developing online courses. That right now, to develop a fully online course is horrendously expensive compared to what it will be in the future. But unless we're doing this now, we're not going to have that cheaper future. But the competitors will be trying to get into the space with a cheaper deployment. And so that's something that we have to manage. So this will be a bit of a so what we have now is a bit of a land rush. It's a bit expensive to get in. What we have at Waterloo that might be different than some other universities is we have a well-known brand for mathematics, just like the university here. We have resources to actually deploy online courses on a large scale, and we've got the know-how to do it. So it's time to get into the game. We already are. There's some challenges, though. Online education in reputational surveys has a worse reputation than classroom education, certainly in North America. Part of the reason for this is that there are a number of institutions that have set up poor quality courses, giving useless degrees for the sole purpose of sucking money out of various organizations, notably the US Veterans Administration being one of them. All right, so we have people who are, so somehow they will target a certain group and present their online offerings as something valuable when they're not. And that has tarnished the reputation of online education quite a bit. There's also the whole world of MOOCs that were going to be changing the world, and then when they didn't, people were quite disappointed, and we had to sort of pivot on that. The notion of whether if somebody is being evaluated in an online course, did they really do the exam themselves, or did their friend do their exam, or did somebody they paid do their exam? So how trustworthy is the evaluation? And so on. And so there'll be a number of universities who are just trying to race to get something out with what we would call in the business world the race to the bottom, to have the lowest price for the offering. So there's going to be market turmoil for a while, and so we have to get in there and get good. All right. Now, I talked earlier about user modeling, and so there are a number of apps that you can put on your telephone that you can say what you've got in your refrigerator, and they can tell you what you can cook. And so this, to me, is the real promise of online education. As a professor, when you have a student come to your office, not when you're lecturing to a room full of students, but when you have a student coming to your office, what do? Okay, you're trying. They're coming to you because they want to understand something, or they're arguing for marks. But let's just say that they're coming because they want to understand something. So you sort of assess what it is they already know and what they're solid at, and there might be 5 different ways to explain this particular thing they're trying to get. And so you tailor your explanation to the individual, trying to use those concepts that they know well. So that at least that way they can get to something solid and add that to the set of things that they know well. And then you can sort of go on and explain other things using that new thing that they know. This is the promise to me of online education. It's not just having different paths to the same material. It's to be able to have dynamic paths that are constructed based on what the user understands. We're not there yet, but we are starting to have the elements to be able to do this. Now, as we have more students participating in online courses, we start to collect data about not just some feeling about what they know well, but actual data that is quite objective about if they got this question right, did they also get this question right or wrong? And so we start to collect an amount of data that can be used for training artificial intelligence systems, or for helping us to identify problem areas. So here's an example of clustering that comes from another area in machine learning, where the method is completely blind to what is being measured. We just have some attributes. And we see that like things tend to cluster. And so we can think of an individual student as being a data point in a high-dimensional space, where what are the coordinates? The coordinates are all of the exam questions. And so then we can look for subspaces in these We can look to principal value decomposition on these we can understand, what are the axes of this feature space, to understand what are the things that somehow go together, what are the things that don't go together, where is the student doing well, and so on, so that each student then becomes a point in this galaxy, and how they learn is somehow a path through this higher dimensional space. So at Waterloo, to use an Anglicism, we're all in, all right? Why? Because the future of the university depends on it, that we have very high quality applicants to the university, and we want to be able to reach out to all of the high quality applicants in the world, not just the ones who happen to be in Ontario. We have about 500 different courses in different areas of mathematics at the university, and so we've got a huge set of potential offerings for our online instruction, something that's different than can be done elsewhere. The possibility of an online co-op degree where students are doing their courses online and they go do their work terms in whatever country they're living in. So this is an area for innovation for education for us. Now, how are we doing it? Well, we have a strategic partnership with MapleSoft for some time, where Waterloo courses are being developed to populate the Mobius system. And so far, the Faculty of Mathematics has invested, depending on what you count, between $12 and $20 million in the effort. So it really is a significant investment by our university. So if somebody hasn't got their online ed tree planted already, now is the time to do it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephen. So now that's a very good way to end the day. We've had a lot of different talks covering lots of different areas. Hopefully you've picked up lots of things. One of the key things, I think, is you've got to have that long-term vision. You've got to have commitment. Otherwise, it won't work. Yeah? You can't just say, okay, we're going to go off down the digital online path without really thinking about it in a serious way. I think Stephen's just more or less said that there, and other speakers have said the same. So we're here to help. People here that have presented are here to help. So use them, use that network. There's lots of things that you can do together. As I said, MapleSoft, we're happy to help and work with you, or to put you in touch with people, yeah, because we deal with different institutions around the world. So use that network. So other than that, I think the only other thing I've got to really say is thank you to Professor Marchisio and her team for helping us arrange that. It's been a great day, thank you. Thank you for the Accademia for helping us do this. And really, buon viaggio, buona serata e fine di buongiorno. Grazie.